What's up, guys? I'm here in California, Southern California, with my friend Mark. You might know him as MC Terps on Facebook. If you don't, then you should know him. And I was just saying this is terrific that he's another tall guy, so I don't have to slouch for the videos or anything, and I don't look like a weird ogre. So this is really cool.
No, it's fantastic. My pleasure that you don't have to slouch for me. It's nice to see everybody. Nice to meet you.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. Now, I've been here before, but today we're going to be taking a look at your amazing operation here with Diamondback Terrapins, but we're going to do it for the first time on camera. So I'm really excited to do that, and I'd love to just have you, explain kind of what you're doing here and show us the ins and outs of all of this.
Yeah, sounds great.
This is a pretty elaborate and cool setup you got here. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so one of the things I think everybody needs to be prepared for when they're going to breed turtles or think about raising them is to have the space and the time and the commitment to raise them. So my garage has kind of turned into the baby turtle rearing facility, if you will. And as they grow and as they get bigger, I kind of move them from tank to tank. I'm constantly, it seems like, tinkering and trying to find that right balance to give them an enriching beginning of life and also have fun with it, and make sure that they come and raise up healthy and can be rehomed to great homes around the country. And so I kind of have everything from little babies that'll be in really shallow water to this time of year, hatchlings that have already started to put on some size, as well as maybe some older animals that are either retired. I have a tank in here where there's males that are put out to pasture, if you will. They're not part of the breeding group anymore, or maybe somebody that is working on a quarantine or a health issue. So this is one of my favorite old guys. So he's 32, 33 years old, one of the original ornate diamondbacks that I got from a single person in Florida a long time ago when I was in college, and it's one of my favorites. He's not in part of the breeding group anymore, but his patterns have been passed down generation to generation. I really like the bold patterns and the variety of diamondbacks. And so he's 32, 33, and one of my favorite guys, but he's hanging out here in the garage with the babies now. So this is a group of 1-year-old or almost 1-year-olds. These are all babies from last year. So these are turtles from last year, or all ornate babies from 2024 that haven't been rehomed. And this is kind of one of my grow out tanks, and kind of deciding who might join the group if they don't find a new home, and who might end up at a reptile show and find a new home there.
Wow, they're massive. They're like 5 inches. They're not even 4 inches. They're like 5 inches. Wow.
It's a pretty fast. It's a pretty fast growing species. Once they start putting on growth, if you're feeding them a couple times a day, your water temperatures are good, your water health is good, then they'll get to around 4 or 5 inches within a year or so, which for the males is pretty close to adult size. It's one of the reasons I've started incubating more for males, is I think a male diamondback is like a great option for a home aquarium turtle, because they tend to be one of the smaller options out there as opposed to a really big slider or cooter turtle.
That's great. It's so true. And they're so active that people really love to keep them because of, they just are constantly in movement. A lot of diamondback keepers will talk about how difficult it can be to get a good photo of them because there's always one limb that's like moving at all times. It's like, you need to have a fast shutter speed.
Yeah, one of the other big things people ask about in diamondbacks is brackish or freshwater, or I kind of do somewhere in between. I throw some salt in. I don't measure it and make it an exact science, because in nature they'd be moving through different salinity levels all the time. But I do believe it's a good idea to add some salt. It is natural for them. I try to put the fish, as you can see, some bubbles, some plants, rocks, other things in the enclosure for enrichment, especially if you're going to have multiple turtles together, so that there are distractions and they don't get focused in on each other. I found over the years of keeping them that it helps me at least reduce turtle on turtle aggression. They have plenty of other places to focus that energy.
I think the only thing here that you're better at breeding than Diamondback Terrapins is guppies. I've never seen so many guppies in my life. And that's saying something, right? Because guppies are a fish that just, everyone has success with, but boy, oh boy.
I started with like 10 guppies and endlers mixed, I think, like maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Every once in a while, I'll have some fun and I'll do some culling and try to get a color strain going. I don't really do anything with them, and
Yeah.
maybe a local aquarium shop. But it's added fun, and it's just part of the hobby, I guess. That if you're keeping an aquatic turtle, what's an appropriate tank mate? You certainly do have to be willing to understand that if the turtle can catch the guppy, the guppy is not going to be long for the world.
Right. But since they're live bearers, they replace themselves, which is nice. That's why I love keeping live bearing fish. I do a lot of I do have guppies, but I also keep a lot of mosquito fish, and I just enjoy that. They do well, and the population stays strong, even though the turtles get a snack once in a while.
Yeah, no, I haven't really ever found too many situations where in a large enough tank with some other things going on, some distractions, some plants, some other variety where the turtle can catch all of the guppies faster than they can breed. I
Right.
know that that's a challenge sometimes, and I certainly understand in like a home aquarium environment, this is a 230, 40 gallon tank, I think. But in a 40 or 60 gallon tank, it could be a challenge if you didn't have enough places for the fish to hide for them to propagate themselves fast enough.
So one thing I love about keeping live bearing fish is that they kind of become like canaries in the coal mine. If your water quality isn't right, or your enclosure, your tank is too small, the fish are going to be the ones that struggle with that before the turtles are. So if all of a sudden your turtles catch all of the fish out of nowhere, that can be a sign that maybe you're having water quality issues that made the fish sluggish, and then the turtles caught them. So it could be water quality, it could be the size of the enclosure, the aquarium, that sort of thing, the tub that you're keeping them in. So just keep that in mind, you know, when you're cohabiting fish and turtles together.
I think we have a collection of ornates here that we can kind of talk about this pattern, this flower backing pattern, and kind of how it presents itself in Diamondbacks. So there's everything from this one in my right hand here, where you really don't see any light striations or starburst patterns or flower patterns, whichever you like to call it, around the edge of each scoot. And then the one that Anthony has, you can see it a little bit starting around the edge. And then these two are more pronounced. And the neat thing about the flower backing is it's a little bit of like playing the lottery. You're not sure exactly what they're going to look like as an adult as they continue to grow and their scoots shed. They can get a variety of different intensities of that pattern, and it's really kind of one of the other things that makes them super unique in my view as a turtle, that each one has not only an amazing skin pattern that's unique, but many of them have like very unique shell patterns as well. The amazing thing about something like the flowerback pattern is it's becoming more and more common in the hobby. But for mine, since I know exactly where the original ones came from and I've kept them as a closed group, it wasn't in any of the original ones I got. So as those animals continue to have subsequent generations, that trait showed up and appeared and is now becoming more common as I go to third and fourth and fifth generation animals.
That's incredible. So is that something that you line bred, that you saw, oh, this one's pretty, I'm going to start to I'm going to hold this one back, and then that one has subsequent generations that continue to get more and more pretty like that?
There are people doing amazing stuff with line breeding and very selective breeding with very small groups and putting out like Diamondbacks that are just incredible. And like there's all kinds of creative names that keep coming up every year for the different shell and skid patterns that breeders are coining terms for them. Personally, I've kind of always kept them in a little bit bigger groups, gone for a little bit more natural, but I have kind of naturally selected out certain traits. So if I wanted to generally have bigger, bolder spots, I like the blue skin, I like bold patterns. And so, yeah, I've tended to keep the ones each year that as my holdbacks and add them to the group that show those traits and rehome the ones that maybe don't show that trait as much. So somewhere in between selective breeding and line breeding, but still keeping them in larger groups of communities and not just single animals. One of the things when you deal with animals and you can keep them outside is to beware of predators. And I did have an unfortunate incident where a family of raccoons were able to get into one of the enclosures, and they can't necessarily get to the turtles in my setups, but they can collapse your top. And unfortunately, I had a situation where that happened, and this particular turtle got loose, and somebody got a hold of them, maybe a possum, which I actually just saw a possum walking across the street.
Like just right
Yeah,
now?
yeah. There's a possum walking down the sidewalk right there, down to the right. And unfortunately, this turtle got out, and someone got a hold of it and did some damage to its tail. So happily, I found it and was able to, obviously replace the top to make it more secure. But it is something you need to be prepared for and think about when you're setting up your enclosures. So this one is inside now, has a tank of their own where there's no chance that another turtle is going to come by and see their damaged tail as the skin was repairing itself, and that would be obviously a trigger potentially for aggression. And so you have to have ability to isolate animals to be able to take care of them when that becomes necessary. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but it is healing nicely, and so it's great, and of course involve a vet or something if whenever you're in doubt and you're not sure whether you can handle a situation yourself. In here in the garage, as I put him back in, I actually even have to have rat traps. I'll get rodents. So because we're inside, because we're in my garage and there's humidity and it's a nice place to hang out and there's turtle food and other things, I on occasion will get a rodents in here. So you got to just be prepared to deal with whatever kinds of predators or pests that might come along with your hobby, and it's just part of being responsible and doing things right. So in addition to the flowerback pattern, one of the other things you hear a lot is concentric diamondback versus a northern or a Carolina or a centrata, these different terms. I tend to be a hobbyist and I work a lot more with the common names. But before I get to that, one of the things that I do, because I do travel for work some, is I bought some inexpensive automatic feeders from Amazon. I can, you press the button and you can set it at 8, 12 or whatever, and a little thing comes out and it'll drop in some food. So if you have a neighborhood, if you don't have a family member, you have someone in your neighborhood that can't help you, or for a few days, it can definitely be a great way to make sure that your animals are continuing to receive nutrition when you're away on holiday. In this one, I have a couple different types of diamondbacks. I have a northern group, and that includes a northern, which have a lot of variety, but tend to be more recognizable by kind of a marbly pattern on their shell and dots, if you will. And my original northerns came from a woman named Mimi Luttrell a long time ago. It was the very first Diamondbacks I got from California Turtle and Tortoise Club, and she would call them stars and stripes, I believe, for the pattern on their shell. And that's a great other way to just think about, like, maybe a difference between a northern and a concentric is the dots, is the pattern on the shell kind of like a marbly muddled pattern, or is it very defined concentric circles on the scutes? And at the end of the day, it's just a term we've come up with in the hobby as breeders. And if you love the turtle, then that's what's important. The skin pattern is going to stay for life. So if you're thinking about getting one, just get one where you're going to enjoy them. And that's the most important thing, not what some breeder calls them, in my opinion.
Tell me about these floating white things in this aquarium here. There's no animals in there, right?
No, I mean, a guppy may get in there by accident, but not on purpose. So one of the things that I've done with some of the baby rearing facilities is you can kind of take different approaches when you're raising turtles, change out all the water all the time, or go really heavy with biological filtration. So I include a UV filter and all of the systems that I have, and it's bio balls basically. So I just throw a pump in there and push the bio around. It's kind of fun visually. I don't know, maybe I could get some disco lights going on it or something for dance theme. But so basically the water comes into one side, goes through some pretty basic filter media and gets pushed up into these tanks as like above tank sumps that have some additional filtration, the heater, the UV filter, some other things that's kind of nice to keep away from the actual animals. And it allows me to increase the water volume a lot, increase the biological filtration a lot, while still keeping the area that the turtle's in, where they're interacting with the food, where I'm observing them and making sure they're healthy, at a more reasonable size, so I don't have to hunt for them as much. So it's worked for me, but it's always tinkering. It's kind of part of the fun for me, is changing it around all the time. So these are some of the youngest babies I have left from last year. We're in the beginning of 2025, so they were born at the end of 2024, and we're using this part of the setup to kind of help get them started. So a lot of times it's great if they eat a pellet right away, but it's much more common that you're doing a brine shrimp or a freshwater freeze-dried shrimp or another kind of food like that to kind of help stimulate them. Live brine is super fun to watch them chase if it's something that you're willing to do or can get at your local fish store. I know that that's a lot more difficult to get from tropical fish stores now, but that used to be my favorite when they were little, to watch them chase the sea monkeys around and catch them. It's a lot of fun. But I work with them and try and get them set up so that they're eating on pellets and putting on some size before they go off to their new home. And these are different clutches from multiple ornate moms from our project here, and I really enjoy raising them up and seeing the difference in the pattern in the shells, even from them being really small, which we looked at the ornates, which end up kind of with a black shell mostly with a lighter center. But the neat thing, if you look at them, is a lot of them start with a very cream or yellowish color shell. And that's one of the another great kind of experiences in raising up ornate diamondbacks, is how much they change and their shell changes as they grow. And the little ones, the black fills in pretty quickly, so you really only get that for the first few months once they start growing. So these are some of the babies from last year that have started to put on size, and it kind of displays some of what I love about the diamondbacks, where this one up here on my thumb has some pink on its head. The next one might be a little bit more gray with some bluish, and there's another one that's a little more white and has a more traditional ornate pattern. And a lot of folks ask when they're really little, like, oh, is it going to be a flowerback? And you really can't tell until they put on some growth. And one of the ones I'm holding is about as small as I can tell for sure that they're going to be a flowerback, where it's starting to show that striation around the edge of each scoot. And you need them to put on a couple inches of size in order to be able to start seeing that come through.
Just more proof that it's a special day here in Southern California. It is sunny and raining at the same time. Maybe we'll see a rainbow. Anyway, this garage setup was absolutely incredible, seeing what Mark is doing with these diamondbacks. Let's see the adult turtles that are actually really doing all the work. Not that Mark isn't doing work, but they're the ones producing all of those amazing babies that we just saw.
One of the things that I do outdoors is I have the sand that I get from like Home Depot or Lowe's, and I use it for the nesting area. Once the nesting time is over, I tend to use like just simple pavers or something else to kind of cover up the sand area. It reduces the amount of sand that gets into the tubs, polluting the water, kind of making filtration and things more difficult. And I prefer for them to brumate in the water than buried in the sand. Based on my climate, it works really well for me, and it keeps them from traipsing the sand into the water all year long. I kind of like that natural, like the big bold pattern. I think it's one of the things that's neat on them. And so I do tend to keep the ones that have the boldest pattern, and that's why I was showing that other one, is like I think her genes have kind of passed down and mixed with like the big bands with the big spots, and you get a little bit different every time you hatch the babies out. You never know what you're going to get. There's another group of ornates in here that happen to be like the big bold pattern ones, and like great grandmother is in a separate enclosure. So I have kind of started to separate them based a little bit on the appearance and traits, and kind of keeping the numbers that work for the size of the enclosure and an appropriate mix of male and females. And you know, diamondbacks tend to be pretty gregarious. This particular group, for some reason, they tend to be a little bit more secretive. I haven't figured out why yet, but they haven't gotten used to running over to me when I come out to feed. They kind of hide a little bit more. So just like any animal or species, dog, cat, anything that you have, there's general breed stereotypes, but it doesn't mean that your specific animal is going to always act exactly like that. So one of the fun things about working with long-lived species is you got to be prepared to take care of them, but you also know that like you're going to have a legacy in the hobby, and that hopefully the animals that you breed and share your love for the hobby will end up persisting. This particular turtle is actually a granddaughter of one of the original turtles that I got from Mimi Luttrell many, many years ago. And so it's kind of great that that bloodline lives on in just me, let alone other people around the country. Northern, so that's a northern Diamondback Terrapin.
And Luna is very interested in these.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is a more traditional concentric type looking Diamondback Terrapin. Boy. You see that? So he actually had like a pretty severe shell issue when he was little. And you can see, like reptiles, you got to be patient. It does take them time to heal. But with the right nutrition and conditions, they will over time, they will heal. That injury on its shell was pretty severe when it was really small. And it's almost gone now. I think in a few more years, a few more sheds, no one will even know it's there. It was probably there except for me. Like the stripes and the patterns are just amazing and so much fun and a great part of keeping them. So this is a baby from a couple years ago that's kind of from a concentric northern kind of looking line. And so about at this size is when they can start being outside. And you can see it's going to have an amazing pattern when it sheds. Right now, that's kind of, it's almost like a snake. And a lot of times with the turtles, as they're growing and algae and water hardens, hard water and other things can get on their shell. And then just like a snake, shedding their skin, they will periodically shed their scutes and kind of be a vibrant, amazing looking shell for a little while again. And that is kind of one of the things when you keep them outdoors you need to be prepared for is natural conditions, algae, other things that might affect the shell looking exactly perfect from a book or National Geographic photo standpoint, as opposed to a more naturalistic kind of environment where you might find in the wild where they do get gross and other things on their shells from time to time. So one of the most common questions I get is, what do you feed them? Not pub mix, although I do recommend the pub mix. We naturally empty this as humans, and I'm now using it to feed the turtle. But the reason I'm doing that is there's a mix of a couple of different kinds of food in here. It's Missouri aquatic turtle food mixed in with small crocodilian for the bigger ones, which is kind of nice for the females to have a bigger food to kind of exercise those jaws on, and also kind of naturally skews a little bit more toward the carnivorous side of the food diet than some of the other foods, which are a little bit better blended for turtles that might naturally eat a little bit more omnivore type of diet. And when they're little, I've been using ZoomEd hatchlings, so we get in like a plug for all those companies. And no, I don't have a relationship with any of them. I just love the product and they work really good for me.
Mark, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to be here with you and to learn from you and to see what you're doing. I think Diamondback terrapins are such an interesting species because they really are kind of like a gateway turtle. It's something that like a lot of newbies get started with. Is that something you've seen?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people think they're more complicated because of the salt or the brackish water, but there is a whole network of folks that are working with them, breeding them privately, and they're just so amazing. The skin pattern that they just, when you see them the first time, it's captivating, and I think it definitely inspires people to make it one of the first turtles they want because it's just something that they can connect with, and they love the patterns, and it definitely is an area where I'll talk to folks and it'll be the first turtle, and we'll really work on a lot on the education part to make sure that they're ready and understand what to expect and can take care of it properly.
Yeah, I love that. And when I say gateway turtle, I'm talking like albino red ear sliders or something like that, because people who are kind of new see those turtles out there and say, "Oh my gosh, this is like nothing I've ever seen before." I mean, a Diamondback Terrapin is a really special turtle. Uh, Speaking of special, the word special, you are a specialist, and you decide to really focus on one species and really doing it well. And it's awesome because you just don't see it a lot. And I've used the term before, do as I say, not as I do. I keep a lot of different species, and it's really not the best way to do it. And I know that, generally speaking. we all have the opportunity to go out and be an expert in a particular species, and that's really what you're doing. And you've got a lot of years of experience now.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't where I started. So, I mean, I worked with fish and really enjoyed breeding African cichlids before I really even got into turtles, and that's probably why there's still guppies in the tank indoors and mosquito fish outdoors. But at the end of the day, I did have time when I had spotted turtles and fly-red turtle and other kinds of turtles, and it really just got to a point where I love the Diamondbacks enough, and I felt like I can do this one species like really well, and they're so diverse, and I can take care of the babies, and I can put in the resources to do one well, or I can enjoy having a collection of many. I see the value in both. I love going to the reptile shows. I love like interacting with my friends that keep all kinds of other species, and it's fun. It's fun to learn about other things. And for me, it's just been the right move to focus on one species that is, for me, enough variety in how they look that it kind of, it works for me, that I don't need a bunch of other ones. And I think I can take care of them better and like just do a better job of working with that one species and being able to be successful and share the babies with other people that also will love them. As opposed to having a lot of different kinds of things with lots of different parameters where I probably wouldn't be able to be as successful with getting hatchlings.
Yeah, that's a great call. And if you're someone who is trying to figure out how you want to organize your efforts and what you want to put the time and energy into, keep in mind that there are a lot of people that look down on keepers, private keepers, and it's really important for us to be really thoughtful and mindful about the way that we do things, particularly the way that we kind of put ourselves out there publicly as well. Specialization like this that Mark is doing is a really great way to do that. We have a reputation for being kind of flighty, for changing our mind, for being on the classified ads, which are the most public account of who hobbyists are, keepers, private keepers are. And we have an opportunity, and I would argue an obligation, to be better than that, to be more than what you see on the classified ads. So specializing and becoming an expert and not changing what species you're keeping all the time is one way to do that, is a great way to do that. So think about that. There may be a species out there that not a lot of people are putting a lot of effort into. Maybe it's a species that's been imported a lot, but people aren't breeding and haven't been able to really crack the code on a consistent basis. There's opportunity out there for you to make your mark in a positive way. And I think that's so important. How long have you been working with Diamondbacks?
Yeah, almost 35 years. With the first ones that I got were some Northerns, and then I got into ornates a few years later, and I've been able, with the ornates especially, to have many, many generations over all those years. And
you started when you were like 5 years old?
Yeah. No. I think I'm a little more honest about my age than that, but no, I'm in my mid-50s, so I started in college, and it's something that I've just kept and really enjoy, and it's always been a fun part of my life. I enjoy the reptile shows and the community, and animal folk are good folk in general, and that's one of the things I love. National parks and camping and being outdoors and working with animals, and in general, almost everybody you'll deal with, you can find good people anywhere, and that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed as well. Is there's a community out there that will help support you and just ask for help, because we want to help, and we'll try and make your journey through keeping turtles or whatever it is. You will find a community of folks that are there to encourage and support you and try and help you do it the right way.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for visiting. That's great.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you do to model for this next generation of keepers the right way to do it.
Thank you.
What am I doing right now, Mark?
I found some amazing books that were written by an incredible person who's shares their knowledge with the hobby, and I'm glad that you're in my house. And one of your tasks and requirements for visiting was to sign some great books. So I appreciate your willingness to do that.
I can do that. And it's not often that a turtle friend buys a veterinary book too. That's pretty awesome. I think you're going to really like this one. I'm just saying.
I'm looking forward to it.
This is really cool.
Subscribe, join the crew. Just turtles. There's always something new.